Yu-Gi-Oh budget tier list for February 2025. Big dog, I get it. Ain't nobody got time to be spending thousands of dollars in Yu-Gi-Oh. Fortunately enough, I got you. Today, we're gonna be talking about what would be the most effective budget decks in Yu-Gi-Oh for February 2025. Let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with y'all, big dog? It is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh. I hope that your day, phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. The budget tier list. Big dog, before we start ranking these Yu-Gi-Oh decks, there is a criteria that I go about. First, every single one of these decks can be built for around $100 or less. A lot of these Yu-Gi-Oh strategies can be built for a lot less than $100 though. I just use that $100 range because oftentimes when you're getting into a game, that's a decent amount of money to spend to get the best of the best in any card game. Unfortunately, not necessarily for Yu-Gi-Oh, but is a standard basis. The next thing that I'm taking into consideration with these Yu-Gi-Oh strategies is that if you invest more money to it, does it get stronger? If I'm actually putting in high-end staple Yu-Gi-Oh cards that cost me the money, is it going to make the deck stronger? Lastly, and most importantly, I think as a budget player, it is always a good idea to consider future support. There are some strategies on this tier list that haven't been supported in years, and we don't know if it'll ever get more support. Then there's some other Yu-Gi-Oh strategies, they looking nice, okay. With that being said, let's go ahead and start off with Metalmorph. Metalmorph is probably the cheapest, most competitive Yu-Gi-Oh deck in the entire game. For roughly around $30, you can build a deck, and with enough skill, you might even be able to top, if not win, a regional. It's happened over the last few formats. The good thing about Metalmorph is that it has a high upside for a low cost, but the bad thing about Metalmorph is that there isn't a lot to add to it to make it a stronger deck. I would put it in solid choice. If I were getting into the game and I wanted to spend as little as possible, Metalmorph would be a surefire bet. But understand, you're playing a trap-based Yu-Gi-Oh deck that a lot of players will be prepared for in games 2 and 3. Next is Sword Soul. Sword Soul has one of those really interesting arcs where it just got support, though the Tingy side. Getting Tingy Spirit Surya is huge for this deck. It makes it a lot more consistent, and it makes the deck a lot stronger. The unfortunate thing with Sword Soul is that it is still a borderline Yu-Gi-Oh strategy. Sword Soul's biggest problems is most adolescent problems. Just like how Sword Soul is waiting for that new support to come, we're waiting for our dads to come back with milk. I still have my Reese's Puffs in a bowl waiting for milk. And yes, Reese's Puffs is the best cereal. I'm not debating you. Sword Soul could be an adequate deck, but with no confirmed future worm support, I think borderline is where it's at. Next is Heroes. You guys think that I snubbed Heroes for some particular reason. In my meta tier list, the criteria was decks that topped a regional, at least topped a regional. Heroes have not done this, but it does quantify as a budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck, seeing that the entire deck can be bought for pretty cheap. The unfortunate thing about Heroes is that I don't think that's the reason why Heroes can't top. I think that it's borderline at best, unfortunately. Navigating the hero strategy is just like trying to figure out what your girlfriend wants to eat at night. And take it from me, the big dog that's been doing this for over 15 years, never asks what she wants, just get her the chicken nuggets or the tacos. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work for Heroes, as trying to figure out the best build comes with a lot of sacrifices. You can go for a more powerful build using more evil heroes, but the problem with that is that the deck becomes more inconsistent than your KDR on Call of Duty. You can go to a more consistent lower to the ground build, but the huge problem with Heroes is that it doesn't have enough unfair cards to be able to win games. I'm not even going to cap, I genuinely think that borderline is a compliment. It should be and takes a good pilot, but it does have more support onto the future. Paired with it does get stronger with Fiendsmith, it is one of the safer picks if you're genuinely gooning over Heroes. Gladiator Beast, my boy. Did somebody mention Gladiator Beast? I'm telling you, this deck is one of the best decks in the game, unless we're talking about modern format. Gladiator Beasts have a few problems. First of all, it doesn't get back to the basics. Using Gladiator Beast Geysers to control the game, and Gladiator Beast Lucari to attack over the strongest monsters. Gladiator Beast is this new school Yu-Gi-Oh that everybody's playing, where you try to summon as many negates as possible, but the problem with Gladiator Beast is that it loses to a single Bestial, a Nibiru the Primal Being, or just about any other negation. Unfortunately, Gladiator Beast isn't good. I'm lying. Gladiator Beast is the best deck in the game, and let me me tell you how Gladiator Beast Sam Knight is actually a good pick. Unfortunately, we both know that Gladiator Beast isn't getting any more support, so Noodles probably would be a better investment unless you are a GB diehard and no one played hand traps at your locals. Pearly still takes the cake as one of those strategies that is a solid choice. The reason why I have Pearly over Sword Soul and Heroes, which could be a shock to some, is because Pearly is actually set up in the perfect situation. Board Breaker Yu-Gi-Oh cards are especially strong, and Divine Arsenal AA Zeus is a blowout card. On top of that, the entire Pearly deck is like, what, $5 now? You can reason that you can make a really good Pearly deck for incredibly cheap and worth it. My favorite thing about Pearly right now is that a lot of players are using Black Goat's Laughs, and since the deck is really cheap, this is probably the first upgrade you should look to. It allows you to be able to summon out Pearly monsters while also preventing your opponent from activating those good effects. Just an amazing deck overall. Next is Tenpai Dragon. My brother, what are we doing here? Tenpai Dragon is top budget, easy. Don't even talk to me. If you guys wanted the most competitive, successful deck on this tier list, it's Tenpai Dragon. With a proven track record, despite the ban list that came out, Tenpai Dragon is one of those ones. As long as you're okay with the Yu-Gi-Oh community calling you brain dead or a gooner for playing the Sky Striker route, then strap on your helmet real tight because Tenpai Dragon is one of the best decks in the game and just so happens to be a budget deck. Red Dragon Archfiend, the master of faster, the king of disaster. Homie got the blaster. Yeah, I'm not gonna be proud of this, but I haven't played the Anime Ham game just yet, and this is some exclusive info. Red Dragon Archfiend versus Blue Eyes Anime Ham. You can book it. I think some of the best things about Red Dragon Archfiend is that it can play Bestials and it can address a Yu-Gi-Oh board. In fact, you can run those 18 hand traps with the Bestials to make this deck incredibly successful. But the problem is getting hand trapped. Unfortunately, players have figured out not to hand trap Soul Resonator and to hand trap the Synchro 6. That, and we don't have any other Dark Dragon Synchro monsters we can use, really puts us in a tough spot. I'm gonna put it in takes a really good pilot. Though I am hoping that we get to destroy Blue Eyes and Anime Ham and advance Jack Atlas. This is gonna be cool. Goblin Bikers, the big kabongas. Goblin Bikers were supposed to be a Yu-Gi-Oh strategy to top multiple regionals. It was a hard counter to YuGiOh, and if YuGiOh became a tier 0 deck, it was supposed to be that strategy that could counter them. I think we're still waiting on it to counter them. Do something! Yeah, Goblin Bikers at best is borderline. Goblin Bikers still have a ton of potential to make some really huge plays. And Fiendsmith does make Goblin Biker stronger, and you don't need a full Fiendsmith engine. The problem with all this though is that it's still Goblin Bikers. It requires multiple card interactions. It's not necessarily great going against non-XC decks, and it has a ton of problems on its own. Now, I know the warlords from the Bushido are going to be incredibly mad at me when I tell you that 6 Samurais is, yeah, get those noodles, bro. Or I think, would it be ramen here? I think it might be ramen. Warriors of the Bushido. By the way, I just gave you a cool name, use it. I don't think that your deck is trash, but I do think that Konami played y'all. You guys are like the Speedroids of Supreme Darkness, like the Metalmorph of Rage of the Abyss, the Modoshe of Infinite Forbidden. Don't be mad at me, be mad at Konami. They dragged you along by giving you hopeful support, but didn't do enough to get you across the goal line. With no future support confirmed in sight, 6 Samurai looks like a completely dead deck, but it is confirmed to have an animation chronicle and Sky Strikers are getting support. So 6 Samurais may be on the up and up. It's just gonna be trash for now. A lot of people were disturbed that I didn't include Ritual Beasts in my meta tier list, and again, you have to be a deck to have topped at least a regional. Ritual Beasts Fall from Grace really needs to be studied because it is still a good board breaker Yu-Gi-Oh deck, and it still has some very unfair interactions, one of them still being Dimension Shifter. I think that this is one of those solid choice budget Yu-Gi-Oh decks. It's one of those Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that requires a big brain, like Pinky in the Brain type big brain, don't be Pinky, and oftentimes can be frustrating and unfair to deal with cards like Nibiru in the format. So take caution when it comes to this strategy, but it's also a dual terminal like strategy, so it's gonna get support in the future. Christon. Chat, I think the fact that Christon is on a tier list is a testament in itself. Let's go to before the announcement of Supreme Darkness. I don't think on anybody's bingo board, Christon and actually good or topping a regional was on anyone's bingo card. So the fact that it's even here is crazy, and the fact that I'm gonna put it into solid choice is even crazier. I think even if I wanted to put it lower, I would be obligated to put it right here because it does have the regional tops on its belt, and it has quite a few. Christon is a pretty good Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that is adapted to modern Yu-Gi-Oh. One card combos, tons of hand traps, and replayability. The problem with Christon is that once players figure out how to beat it, it becomes a little bit easier to play against, and I doubt that we're going to get any more Christon support. It's possible, but doubtful. Ninjas, my boy. Boom. Shadow Clone Jutsu. The other deck that definitely is with the ramen. What went wrong with ninjas? Well, just like Gladiator Beast, just like Six Samurais, just like Madolche and the other archetypes that they support, they gave us fake gold. And I ran with it and won an event. Not saying that it's impossible for you to win with these decks, but not likely, and not likely will have support coming soon. Argo Stars should really be higher than Noodles or a better investment, but if there was ever a strategy that Konami just left out to die on opening release, this is one of them. To be honest with you, I want to put it into Takes a Good Pilot, but it's not good right now. It's going to get so much better when the next set comes up. So it's really important to not only see the placement, but hear what I am saying about these decks. This strategy has potential. Buy it. It's really put in the correct spot, especially with the new Maze set coming out. Melodious is a solid choice. It's just like Christon. Don't expect this deck to go crazy or get any more support to make it relevant, but it is modernized in current Yu-Gi-Oh to be able to compete the best way that it can for a budget. I think I'm starting to notice a trend here, guys. We got modernized and then fool's gold, because Raid Raptors is fool's freaking gold. This is another strategy that I was trying to cook people with, only to realize that Raid Raptor's biggest problem is Raid Raptors. Needing 2 and 3 card combos just to be able to do your thing in a Yu-Gi-Oh format where strategies are 1 card combos is sick. Though we do need to have like a scrub deck Olympics for these bad Yu-Gi-Oh strategies, because man, they are so fun to play, like not even gonna lie. Fire King is one of them ones, dog. I talked about it in the top 5 budget decks this format, and this deck is one of the best budget decks available. Konami sometimes can be hit or miss on their structure decks, but the Fire King deck is proving itself to be really good. You can play it with Cash Tira, which I would say is a top budget deck as well, or you can play it as a pure Yu-Gi-Oh deck and have success. Its upgrade ability comes in the form of the Dominus cards, which would be very helpful for you in the future, and overall is just a strong fire Yu-Gi-Oh deck, especially now that Snake Eyes isn't even in the way. Black Wings. Black Wings suffer a similar thing to Raid Raptors, but we know that Black Wings is going to get support, and the best thing is that Black Wings can play with other cards, like the Bestials. I'm not going to lie, I think that Black Wings currently are in a better spot than they've been in quite some time, because Bestial Black Wings can not only compete, it can play adequate board breakers instead of having to rely on 50 million hand traps to be able to compete. It's a solid choice for a player that's really good at it. Branded for the brain dead. Branded has went through the ringer, but I think it's one of the better budget Yu-Gi-Oh decks. Branded still has a lock using Ido, Supreme, whatever it is, fairly annoying, but the best thing about Branded is that it's pretty malleable. We know for a fact that Branded is getting more support in the future. There's just like no ifs, ands, and buts. They love this strategy like how they love Goon Striker. And right now, I think that it can be an incredibly powerful Yu-Gi-Oh deck and still has some of those unfair concepts going around. Now, Dark World, I'm not going to crap on Dark World. Probably going to be the first time. Dark World does have to continue with Bestials, but if I had to compare Dark World to some of these other strategies, I'd actually put it in Takes a Good Pilot, ironically. One thing that I want to heavy stressfully is board breaking is very important, and Dark World is one of the best board breaker decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now hold your horses, big dogs, you still gotta deal with Bestial monsters and potentially Droll and Lockbird. But a well-balanced Dark World deck, I think with the right pilot, could actually be strong enough to be able to compete at a local level. Chat, when I say mommy, you say milkers. Put in the comment section about the mommy milkers. Mommy! Mommy! All right, guys, I'll stop with that, but Labyrinth is still one of the best budget decks in the game. Labyrinth is probably one of the best examples of Konami making a Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that's powerful enough to be able to compete at certain times, but not overbearing. Labyrinth is so unfair, but also at the same time requires a skill base. Eradicator Epidemic Virus never got banned. It's kind of crazy how Eradicator Epidemic Virus never got banned. It's one of those really powerful Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that scales to the meta, and right now, Labyrinth is there.
Exodia.
Exodia reminds me when you guys are laid out and you can't go to Waffle House, so you go to Denny's and you look at the Denny's menu and like you'll eat stuff, but it leaves a little more to be desired. I would say Exodia is a top budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. It's getting support that we know is going to make it stronger, but the deck still leaves more to be desired. There are some rumblings in my last tier list that you can play a Fiendsmith engine, and it's a little bit different than most Fiendsmith engines, only using Lacrima and Desiree alongside of Requiem to be able to send Fiendsmith in Paradise from your deck to the graveyard. Shout out to you, big dog. That's a smart idea. Exodia has the floor to be one of those turn off your brains and just play type Yu-Gi-Oh decks, and then players can get complex and nuanced with this strategy, which really makes the deck really fun to look at. Trap tricks. Brother, there's already 2 good trap decks. What are you doing with this one? That's right, for like the upteenth straight tier list, Trap Tricks is at the bottom. There's actually quite a few Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that came out at that time of Trap Tricks and were good for a while, but then completely fell off because the power of Yu-Gi-Oh strategies went all the way up while this deck stayed the same. And that's the biggest problem with Trap Tricks right now. I think ice barriers are 100% borderline. When this deck pops off, you're cooking. But when this deck bricks, you're cooked. It's one of those boom or bust dual terminal archetypes, but it is a dual terminal archetype. You need to watch out for it. Sky Striker, I'm also going to put into borderline. I think Sky Striker is better as an engine right now, but the best thing about Sky Striker is that it will get support in the future. For the people that don't play on Master Duel, we just got an Animation Chronicle lore, and it pretty much left us on a cliffhanger. There's still some Sky Striker cards that we may not have seen just yet, but it lets us know that there's more support on the way. So new flows coming soon. Be patient, brother. Regardless, right now, Sky Striker is a pretty decent going second board breaker style Yu-Gi-Oh deck. The only problem is that Tenpai is a better going second board breaker style Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Metal Flame Swordsman. Bro, why are you making me do this? Because I really like this deck. Metalmorph is a fun looking strategy. Summoning out Red Eye's Metalmorph Dragon is crazy strong. Omni Negation, really strong. The only problem is where Konami dropped the ball on this Metalmorph strategy is that they decided to make the other Metalmorph cards lackluster, to say the best. It's like you're talking on the phone to this girl and she's saying everything that you want to hear. She has the voice. She plays video games. She's good at them. And Yu Yu Hakusho's her favorite anime? What? And then you see her in person and you're like, definitely something's there and you want to try something, but it's hard to make it work. Marincess would 100% be in Takes a Good Pilot. We know that it's getting more support, and this is a hand trap based Yu-Gi-Oh deck that can play around the Bystials. Unfortunately, here's the problem with Marincess right now. You remember a long time ago when I said there's no reason to play the other water decks like Mermail, Ice Barrier, Sharks over Marincess? Well, now the tables have turned. There's almost no reason to play Marincess over the other water decks because not only do they have an easier time making those X-Seed cards, they have been supported crazily enough to be stronger decks where Marincess really hasn't. Also, another big thing what Marincess had was hand traps, and that can be considered hit and miss at times. It's 100% one of the weirder spots that Marincess has been in. Now, I pretty much already summed up Sharks. We're getting 7th Tachyon in the May set. We're also getting a new Shark card too. This deck is primed and ready. The only reason why I'm putting it in borderline is because I don't think that this will be a really good deck yet because of the lack of a good spell card to be able to trigger Surfacing Big Jaws, but it's definitely on the up and coming. And lastly is Blue Eyes. Just 3 copies of this structure deck I think is one of the best budget decks we've ever had. Simply amazing. They did a good job with this structure deck. If anybody was trying to get into the game and you were an older school player, the 3 Blue Eyes structure decks is where I would point just about everyone for the budget and its price as well as its competitiveness. I said budget and price like they aren't the same thing. And that's all that I have for the budget tier list for February of 2025. I can't wait to see what those new Odeon cards are going to be, everything inside of that May set. When we do, I can't wait to talk to you all about those particular cards. But until then, be sure to check out these videos so I can catch you on the next one.